The Power of Habit. Now, I'm not doing the whole book, and today we're just going to do part 1, and then I'm going to go to sleep. Let's get this started with, people. Let's start off with The Power of Habit, part 1, where we just get to talk about the habits of individuals. This one is by far the easiest to actually talk about, and I've got a bunch of stories to actually tell you guys about today. So let's get started with. Now, firstly, I have actually a few ideas to talk about. Let's start off with the habit loop. Now, the habit loop is actually a pretty important thing, and it's the only reason why we do this, and also why we do this. Reading a book, or why we watch videos, or why we do anything too. Why I make YouTube videos, even though it's like this time. Those kind of things. These are habits. And mine is a pretty bad one too, and so I kind of have to break this up. But then as Ed Sheeran made in one of his songs, these things take control, and like it's pretty good, and it feels good too, and that's also pretty good too. And then we have to talk about a bunch of other things, so like framing brains, those things. Now, the habit loop is just something that's really useful when it comes to things. Like, people have actually studied the habit loop for a while now, and we've even learned that mice can do it. And sometimes this habit loop is so strong that that it overrides literally everything. The brain thinks it's the most important thing ever. It can even override common sense. Like, apparently, when researchers actually started testing mice with the habit, they actually showed them that things happen if they did certain things, like pulling a lever or going through a floor. They would get food or a separate reward. However, but then they poisoned the food, and they tried to feed the mice the food. Some of them ate it and they died, and then the rest are like, okay, that's poison food. And then, however, and then they electrocuted the floor, and the mice started walking away from the food and the floor. However, once there was like a cue, like, if you do this, then you should do this, and then you will get this. Like, this is the cue to go ahead to the door. Like, the click sound is the cue, and then you see a lever, you pull the lever. Then if the lever is pulled, you get food. They go ahead and did it, even though they knew that the pulse was poisonous. And then when the click happened, another click happened, and they walked through the floor, even though the floor was electrocuted. They even walked through it, even though they were vomiting all the time. It was so terrible. It was also kind of agonizing too. And of course, that is how powerful habits are. And this is a pretty useful technique when you're actually going to go ahead and remember things too, because a habit might even save your life. Now, imagine this. This is basically what happened. A virus, something similar to the common cold, but way worse than that. It won't do much harm to like 20-year-olds and 50 and 30-year-olds, but like in your late 70s and 50s, that is a big problem. And basically, it does not much damage to your skin. In fact, it just like gives us those like annoying warts at a time. However, if you do things, however, the only reason why it doesn't attack the brain, and yes, it could attack the brain, is because of the membrane that protects the brain from the rest of the body. That's the reason why zombie viruses don't work. Unless, like, it's too strong for the membrane to go ahead, and the immune system was not working well. So, apparently, a big chunk of brain was eaten by this virus. Luckily, they ate antiviral drugs and the memory part, and they saved the rest of the brain. However, the part that created new memories, the one that stored them, basically was destroyed. However, they were able to save the one that created habits, and that was pretty useful. And so habits started forming, and literally everything was starting to become a great thing after one another. In fact, one time he was the old man was supposed to go ahead, and he was supposed to go on his daily walk because of his exercise routine. And I'm bumping into this table too much, right? Yes, I'm gonna move backwards. And then his wife, however, thought that he was wandering in someone's room when actually he was outside taking a walk. And then she was like, "Oh shoot, my husband, no!" And she started crying her eyes out. And then she was like, called the police. They couldn't find him anywhere. And so she went home crying. And then she saw him, and she was like, "What?" And she saw why he went out. He went and collected souvenirs. He got some pine cones, and he even got some rocks too. He was really confused by her tears and said, "Wait, honey, what's wrong?" "Oh, you're at home." And he was like, "What are you talking about? I was here the whole time." Dude, and that all happened, and literally everything was happening too. And she was so nice, and she was so happy, but she was also kind of perplexed. She asked him where was their house. He had no idea. And then That's pretty much how it all happened. The habit actually started coming in, like walking around and you're there. That was the cue to go home, and he finally he knew how to go home, how to walk around the block, so that he can walk around and then come back home. He knew the cues, so they did an experiment where he put some cards with random 8 items on them. However, there were 2 cards, each of them with different 8 items in different orders. However, every time after a few months of training, the old man, which only could create the habit, was able to pick the card which was deemed as the correct card because it has a sticker of correct underneath it, space underneath it called correct. 25% of the time, then 75%, and then 85%, and finally 95%, and then eventually it was so great that he would always choose that card. That all happened, and he decided. And then one day, the scientists decided that since this is a habit, they would just go ahead, and they decided to make sure that this was a habit and that he couldn't remember all this. So they took the 8 objects off the cardboard and put them in a random pile, and they asked them to sort them into 8 different piles, with one of them being correct. And after that word, they would just go ahead and flip it over. And he was like, okay, he took one out and then he flipped one over, and then they made him flip it back down, saying, hey, we just told you to put them in like 2 piles of 8. Why would you literally need to flip it over? And he said, I don't know, it must be a habit. And this was the literal evidence they needed to show that habits were useful, and that this was not worth it at all. They're like, the memory was doing it for him, but habits were. But then later on, he started getting old, and he always forgot that he was a 70-something-year-old man, and he always thought he was still a 20-year-old man. Would still walk at the same speed, which is pretty bad for brittle bones. And then his breakfast routine of bacon and eggs, and he always thought it was in the morning. Like, he would forget he ate bacon and breakfast, and then he would just go back down and eat bacon and eggs because he still thought it was like morning time, and he just woke up. That happened, and that loop happened, and he kept eating that unhealthy bunch of foods. Even if there were a bunch of fruits and vegetables hiding the bacon, he would search around and until he found the bacon and eggs, and he would cook it until he realized that, wait a second, it's not breakfast, it's not morning. That's actually a pretty good thing too. However, then later other habits happened, and he started breaking his pelvis. He broke his hip, but then he recovered, and he immediately was able to go back to his old life. Habits are a very useful thing, and he was able to live until 80-something years old. Next thing, we have to talk about cravings. Now, cravings are a pretty darn good thing to actually talk about too. This is how you get people to get your products, like ads. There's this guy named the Ad Man, and I like his name because his name is Claude Hopkins. John Hopkins plus Claude the cat. Where did he go? Claude? Whatever, I'll figure him out. Anyways, and he goes ahead, and he's basically known as the Ad Man. This is like the 1930s, and this is what advertising just happened for a few years. It's not even 5 years old yet, advertising that is. However, he was able to make unknown goods, like a bunch of nuts and a bunch of oatmeal, into household names. No one has ever heard of these a few years ago, but now they're household names. And he's approached by a friend, and he's all like, hey, so I have this toothpaste. Crunch. Toothpaste? That is the worst thing that you could try to sell for. And I'm trying to get it. And 6 months later, after pestering, he's like, fine, I'll do it if I get a stock of the returns. Deal. That happened. And he was able to, and the guy, the ad man, Claude, he was like studying medical textbooks, and then he realized something. Film. Apparently, film was able to get on your teeth whenever you go ahead and eat stuff. However, it was always there, that nasty, greasy thing that was always stuck between your teeth. That's actually the thing that he realized that people didn't want to take out, because back then sugary snacks were the whole rage, and everyone wanted a sugary snack, and no one really cared about brushing their teeth because it seemed like a waste of time. Also, the toothpaste ones, they weren't even in most Americans' baggage claims. About 5% of the Americans literally had toothpaste and toothbrushes. That all happened, and everyone decided that, hey, you know what? We should just go ahead and sell this thing. And he found out about it, and he decided to make a product out of it and made an ad campaign about it. He made this. Hey, so you don't want that film on your TV? Yeah, it's kind of annoying. Well, then you go ahead and brush your teeth with this Pepsi-Doc. Yay! Brush your teeth and the film's gone. You got beautiful teeth now. That'll happen, and that was a success. However, the first week was a quiet week, the second week was a quiet week, and then the third week, they had so many orders that they could not keep up. It was like a 400% of the stock that they needed. Anyways, that all happened. And this guy made billions already. Okay, he already had millions when before this thing because he already sell other things. And to be honest, in his autobiography, a few paragraphs were dedicated to saying he had so much money that he had no idea what to spend it on. Yikes. And it's because of this that things happen. This is also how deodorant was created and perfume was created too. However, next up, we're going to talk about the golden rule of changing. The habit changes. Habits have to change. That's a definite thing. But how they change is something of an entirely different matter too. Now, things are really important when it comes to trying to change a tactic. And this story I'm going to tell you guys about is about a football story. So there's this football team, and they call themselves the Colts, and they were losing badly. For 15 years, they did not even enter the Super Bowl at all. They were never ever close to winning it at all. And of course, that there was a bunch of slides that happened, and to be honest, nothing worked too. Whatever they did, they always lost. And then another team that was also dubbed the team that put the less in hopeless was able to beat these guys, the Colts, 21-0. Which is a pretty big victory for them. And so the Colts never won a game for 15 years. Finally, they got this new coach who was like, all right, I've changed everything. I need you not to remember a bunch of things. We don't need those big, fat, stupid textbooks about 500 plays or tactics or whatever. I will need you to remember these basic 5. With that, you can do it. But the problem is, the thing you have to do about these basic 5 is you have to do them perfectly every time. You must do them perfectly, literally every time. If one mishap and you lost the game. Got it? Of course, the first season they tried it out. Of course, it's only been a few months and they haven't been able to ingrain that habit yet. But by the time of the second season though, they've done it for a year. And they were able to do each move perfectly. Well, 95% perfectly, but that's close enough. And in their second season, they were able to win. They won so much and they have one more game left to go ahead, and if they won this one more game, they would win the 1990-something Super Bowl. And they decided, wait, these guys are going there, but if I do this, then they'll be able to break through and do that. Okay, I must not do this. Then there's a big chance, there's a 98% chance that they will go and get a touchdown, win the game. No, sorry about coach, but your habit is worthless here. And they go away, and they all went away, and they started trying to chase for them. And he's like, what are you doing? Remember your habits. And whenever he asked them, what the heck happened there? What the hell happened there? They're all like, well, your habits, they're useless in this situation. It's too much. It's too much of a risk if we do this. We'll lose. I have to put more effort into this. And this requires little effort at all, which is going to be worthless here. Bro, that's the point. You have less effort to do this so you can think about that. To be honest, he's got a point. But they did the same thing in the 2001. And then finally, the coach was fired. And then they won the 2001 Super Bowl because they literally listened to the darn coach that was before them. But then the new coach decided that, wait, I'm not that good at habit making, and got the new guy, the gold guy, the old coach, to come back, and he did come back. And the 2002 Super Bowl, they decided, hey, you know what? We did it, boys. We did it. We listened to our coach. We did the habits. We did it. And our coach is an international star now. Wow. And they dedicated the trophy to him. Must have been heartbreaking for him. It must have been heart softening for him too. And that's pretty much it. All the stories you're going to need. But there's actually just one thing in common for all of them. Find a cue and a reward. And there's a loop. The habit is just a cue, an action, and a reward. There is a possibility you can change habits, but you have to but there's a higher chance of changing the habit if you change the cue and the reward. All you have to do is change the action. Or if it gives the same reward, then you got yourself a changed habit. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you guys soon. And please, until next time, I'll see you guys then. Shnan out, peace, and please wear a helmet. Bye!